How do you explain to someone that the dance was not about Colt, that it was never really about Colt, when the video shows exactly what it looks like? I told myself I was just seeing whether Jonas would react, whether he still cared enough to say something, and that nothing about a birthday party could be as serious as the silence that came after. But what I did not understand was that Jonas was watching the whole room, not just me, and that the silence I read as losing was something else entirely. My name is Orla Devane. I am 31 years old, and I coordinate private events for a living. I have spent nearly a decade learning how to read a room, how to tell, from the angle of someone's shoulders and the way they hold a drink, what an evening wants to become. The problem, and it is not a small one, is that I applied those skills to my own marriage and got the results exactly backwards. Jonas is 34 and a structural architect. For 3 years, I read his steadiness as safety. Then, somewhere in year 3, I began reading it as proof that I no longer surprised him. His calm started to feel like indifference wearing patience. Instead of saying that out loud, I made a plan. The plan began on a Tuesday night at the Perch, a rooftop cocktail bar on the 14th floor of the Carlo building, 2 floors above the restaurant where Jonas had reserved a private dining room for his birthday that coming Sunday. Jonas had stayed behind for a site visit. Colt was there, Jonas's closest friend, a freelance photographer, easy in the way of people who do not read situations carefully. We ended up in the coat check alcove near the stairwell, semi-private behind a partial glass wall, and I said something I had not planned, that I was going to do something at the birthday party to shake things up because Jonas had been too comfortable and I wanted to see him react. Colt asked what I meant. I smiled and said nothing more. When I came home at 11:15, Jonas was standing in the dim hallway. He asked what Colt and I had been doing in the coat check alcove at 9:17 p.m., mentioned the timestamp on the tagged story, and asked what the last thing we had talked about was before the group photo. I said he was turning a tagged story into a crime scene and walked past him. He said he wanted us to talk honestly before the birthday. I said I was tired. Later I heard him open his notes app, type something briefly, and go to bed before me. In the morning, I called my mother and collected the validation I needed. That evening, Jonas's phone lit up on the coffee table while he was in the kitchen, and I caught 1 second of a calendar preview before the screen dimmed. Alderton Avenue, 9 a.m., a Saturday. I told myself it was a site visit, but 9 a.m. on a Saturday was unusual, and the detail stayed with me the way small things do when you are already watching. By Wednesday morning, I had told Simone at work about the birthday plan. I described it lightly, with a laugh already built into the sentence. I was going to have a proper dance with Colt at the party, just to see what Jonas did. Simone said it sounded risky. I told her I was a professional event coordinator, and I knew how to read the temperature of a room. She returned to her screen, and I told myself the hesitation in her face meant nothing. Later that morning, I was making coffee in the break room when I heard Simone talking to Kwame 2 feet away. Their voices were low, but the room was small. Kwame said he had seen the tagged photo from the Perch on Tuesday, Orla in a coat check alcove with some guy, and asked if that was the birthday planning situation. Simone said she thought so. Kwame said from the angle it looked like more than planning. I waited until the conversation moved on, took my mug, and went back to my desk without a word. I categorized what I had heard as ordinary gossip and filed it under things that did not matter. That Thursday evening, I went to Colt's apartment. I told Jonas I was meeting the venue coordinator, which was true for the first 40 minutes and false for the rest. Colt's apartment has a terrace with a canal view, and we sat there while he poured 2 glasses of wine. I told him the dance plan was still on for Sunday. He asked whether Jonas knew. I said Jonas knowing would defeat the entire purpose. Colt looked at the canal for a long moment and said he was not sure he wanted to be the prop in whatever this was becoming. I told him it was just a dance, that he danced with people all the time, that Jonas would feel something real, and then the birthday would be a good evening for everyone involved. I said it the way I say things when I need them to be true. Colt did not say yes, and he did not say no. He refilled my glass, and I decided that silence and a refilled glass were close enough to agreement. On Friday evening, after Leo was asleep, Jonas sat at the kitchen table and asked me to sit with him. He had done a simple calculation, and he walked me through it in a calm, unhurried voice. The venue coordinator's call had ended at 6:45. Colt's building was a 12-minute ride from the venue, and I had not come home until after 9:30. He said he was not accusing me. He used those exact words, and he asked me to give him the honest sequence of the evening. His tone was measured in the way it gets when he is being most careful, and the difficulty in the question was not hostility but precision. He was asking for facts, and facts either line up or they do not. The cracked pink marble phone case was on the table between us, where I had set it when I sat down, and he glanced at it once before he spoke, as if confirming he had the right person in front of him. I looked at him and said he had been tracking my commute like a timeline. I said it was control dressed up as a conversation, and that I could not be in a marriage where my husband timed the gap between my appointments. I said I had been at Colt's to plan the birthday surprise, true and incomplete, and that the rest of my time was my own. He wrote something brief on the notepad to his left without commenting and closed it. Then he said something I was less ready for. He wanted one simple agreement going forward. If I was spending time alone with Colt, he would like to know in advance, not from jealousy, but because he kept finding out through timestamps and tagged photos, and that pattern of discovery was not something he could keep absorbing in silence. He offered it as a mutual rule. He said he wanted a version of things where he was not always reconstructing a situation he should have been part of, as a basic matter of respect in their shared home. I told him he was asking me to report to him like an employee. I said he was treating his own insecurity as a problem he had a right to manage through me. I said if he was so concerned about Colt, he should think about his own attendance in our marriage. The Tuesday at the Perch he had missed. The birthday last spring he arrived 30 minutes late to. The dinner 2 months ago he left early because of a deadline. I said his presence had been selective for months, and I was not going to be held accountable for filling the gaps he created. He listened to all of it without defending himself, without interrupting, without giving me the friction I needed to push against. Then he said he took that on board and was sorry he had not been as present as I needed, and he asked if they could have dinner together next week, just the two of them, no phones, a real conversation at a real table without performance. I said maybe, and meant no, and he understood the gap between those two words without asking me to bridge it. Saturday morning, Jonas left the apartment early with a folder under his arm, said he had an errand, and returned 2 hours later without explaining where he had been or what the folder was for. The Alderton Avenue calendar entry was from that morning, and I had seen it and said nothing, and he had said nothing, and we were both very good at not saying things by then. I opened Simone's work chat and typed that I was going ahead with the birthday plan. She responded with one word and no punctuation mark, and I chose to read it as quiet agreement. That afternoon, Priya texted to say she was planning to bring her camera on Sunday because she always filmed birthday events and wanted to give me a heads up in case there were moments worth capturing. I typed back that the more coverage the better and sent it without rereading. On the kitchen counter behind me, Jonas's laptop pulsed once with a small notification. A cloud sync completing. A file saved somewhere I could not see. And then the screen went dark. The private dining room at Terrace on 7 was exactly what I had planned it to be. Warm overhead lights, long tables full of people talking at the right volume, the sound system calibrated correctly for a room that size. I had organised all of it, and I was genuinely pleased with the way the evening looked. Jonas made a toast early on, something honest about being grateful for the people around him, and he meant it in the direct way he always means things. Priya was filming from the start, her camera an extension of her hand, the way it is for people who do this professionally, constant and light, present without drawing attention. By 9 o'clock, the music had shifted. The bass came through the floor tiles as a vibration before it registered as sound, and several couples drifted toward the small parquet section near the bar side of the room. 3 drinks in, I was in the particular mood I recognize as the one where the evening still belongs entirely to me. I looked across the room at Colt. He had also had 3 drinks. He met my eyes. I tilted my head toward the dance floor in a way that was not subtle, and he hesitated for exactly 1 second, which was not a refusal. And I took his hand and led him out. I had told myself it would last 30 seconds, easy and light. The song was 4 minutes long, and I did not let go after 30 seconds, because the room was watching and I know how to hold a room. Colt moved well. Photographers understand how bodies read in a frame. At some point, Bex draped the yellow birthday sash across my shoulders as a joke, the silver letters reading birthday boy, and the room laughed and I kept dancing. The sash slid sideways and I caught Colt's arm to steady myself and leaned into him and laughed. The laugh was real. The lean was a choice I made while the room was watching. Priya had moved to the attached balcony terrace by then, standing near the glass door for a wider angle. The air out there smelled of birthday cake frosting from the kitchen exhaust vent and cigarette smoke from 2 guests leaning on the railing, something sweet and sharp together. Through the glass, she could see the dance floor clearly, the sash, the lean, and my cracked pink marble phone case sitting on the edge of the DJ booth where I had left it when I took Colt's hand. She filmed for 94 seconds. A waiter crossing the dance floor slowed and let his champagne bottle tilt sideways mid-pour before he corrected himself and moved on. Jonas was at the far end of the bar with a glass he had stopped drinking from. He watched without the face of a man who is angry, with the face of a man running a calculation he had not finished yet. When the song ended, I looked at him across the room and smiled. He did not return it. He raised his glass half an inch, the acknowledgement of someone who has understood something and chosen not to react to it quite yet, and turned to speak with the guest on his left. He did not cross the room and he did not make a scene. That was not what I had built the entire evening toward. I wanted urgency in his step and something awake in his expression. I got 45 degrees away from me and a conversation I could not hear from across the room. I told Colt, leaving the dance floor, that Jonas was being dramatic. Colt said Jonas had not looked dramatic. He said Jonas had looked careful. I said Colt did not know him as well as he thought he did, and Colt went quiet in a way that told me he disagreed but had decided to stop saying so. At 9:45, Jonas found me near the coat check at the corridor between the private dining room and the elevator bank. The bass still moved through the tiles out there, faint and steady. He asked quietly if I would step out for 2 minutes, and I went because I was still expecting a reaction I could use. He asked why his best friend had been his dance partner at his birthday party, and why the dance had lasted the length of an entire song. He mentioned the moment the yellow sash was draped on my shoulders and said he had watched me keep dancing. Then he asked what I had been watching for when I looked at him from the dance floor. Not what I was feeling, what response I had been expecting to see from the man standing at the bar. The question landed differently from everything else he had said that evening. He was not asking what I had done. He was asking what I had intended. And I had no answer that did not expose the calculation underneath the whole plan, the part I had never let myself call by its actual name. I told him I was watching to see whether he was enjoying his own party or standing at the bar looking miserable, which was apparently what he had chosen to do. I said I danced with my friends. I said Colt was not a threat unless Jonas decided to make him one, and that if he had wanted a dance with me at his own birthday party, he should have asked. He listened. Then he said simply that what happened on the dance floor was a choice, and he was not confused about what he had seen. He said he would enjoy the rest of his birthday and that they would talk tomorrow. He walked back into the room. I stood in the alcove for 2 minutes and then followed. Later, after most guests had gone, I took the parking structure stairs down with Colt. He told me he thought this had gone further than a plan. I told him we were both overthinking it. Outside the stairwell window on the sidewalk, Priya was walking toward the lower parking level. She passed the glass at an oblique angle, saw us inside, and stopped for 3 seconds before she kept walking. She did not film it. She did not need to. When I got home, the bedroom door was closed but not locked. From the hallway, I heard the short double beep of a recording application completing a task on Jonas's phone, a sound with a finality that podcasts do not have. I stood there for a moment and then went to the guest room without having decided to. Monday morning, Jonas made a single mug of coffee. The pot was set on separately for me, a thing he had never done before, not from cruelty but from accuracy, matching the temperature of the apartment to what was actually true between them. He asked about Leo's Tuesday packed lunch before going to get dressed, focused on the child's routine in a calm and precise way that was starting to feel less like calm and more like methodical preparation. When he left for work, I noticed that the folder from the Saturday errand on Alderton Avenue was gone from the hallway shelf, where it had been sitting all week. On Tuesday afternoon at school, pickup Ruth was already at the gate when I arrived. We have always embraced at pickup. Ruth has the kind of warmth that Leo throws himself toward the moment he sees her. That day she smiled and asked how the birthday party was. She did not open her arms. The smile reached her eyes in the way that good manners always do, but warmth requires something more than manners, and it was not present. She crouched when Leo ran out and asked what he made in art class that afternoon, and she did not ask me anything that invited a longer story. I drove home and told myself she was having a difficult week. I did not call Jonas to mention the pickup, and not wanting to mention it was its own kind of signal about what I already understood. That Tuesday evening, after Leo was asleep, I sat at the far end of the sofa from Jonas without my phone, which I had planned, and told him I wanted to talk. He closed his book and gave me his full attention the way he always has. I said I had been thinking since the birthday party, and I felt genuinely hurt. I told him I understood he was upset about the dance, but I needed him to see what it had felt like to watch him walk away from me in front of 40 people and spend the remainder of his own birthday at the bar with his back toward me. I said I had felt like a guest at a party I had organized with my own professional skill. I said I needed him to see that his withdrawal had caused real damage, and that if he had a problem with the dance, he could have addressed it without making me invisible to our entire social circle. I delivered this carefully, with the texture of someone managing something real and present, and for a moment he looked at me with an expression I had been trying to produce for days, something that could be read as the beginning of softening. Then he asked one specific question. He said if I had been dancing with Colt simply because I was enjoying myself, why had I looked directly at him, at Jonas, across the room, while the yellow sash was on my shoulders? He said the expression on my face during that particular moment was not the expression of someone who had forgotten her husband was standing at the bar watching. There is no good answer to a question that precise, and we both understood that at the same time. I said I looked at my husband at parties, and that was not evidence of anything. But the performance had a structural problem now. I could not produce convincing grief while fielding that level of specificity. And I heard my own voice shift before I had finished the sentence. I said he always twisted things. I said this was exactly why I could not talk to him honestly. I picked up my phone from the coffee table and went to the kitchen. He did not follow, and I was glad he did not, because I had run out of the performance. At 9:45 that evening, I heard 2 brief message taps from the kitchen where Jonas was sitting. His phone, 2 contacts I did not recognize from across the wall. Then the sound of the laptop opening. He moved the joint streaming account to a single profile under his own email, transferred the billing to his personal card, put his phone charger into his work bag instead of leaving it on the shared nightstand, and went to bed before me. I found the streaming account change at 10:30 when I opened the television and saw one profile where there had always been 2. I checked the billing. I told myself it was a technical adjustment. I did not ask him because I did not want the conversation that would follow. And what I missed, sitting there in the one profile glow, was that the account change was not an adjustment, but a date, a specific date on a record he was already building entry by entry. The next afternoon I drove to my mother's house. Dina had the yellow oilcloth on the kitchen table and the ceramic fruit bowl and the particular warmth of someone who has heard only one version and has decided that version is the complete picture. I gave her that version. Jonas cold and distant at his own birthday, my attempt at having fun, his response making me invisible, my Tuesday attempt at honest conversation turned back against me by a single question I could not answer. I said I already regretted the dance, and that Jonas was treating a reaction that was entirely his own as a problem located entirely in me. Dina said he had always processed inward and called it integrity. She said I deserved someone who met me where I was. I drove home feeling clarified by a misunderstanding I had built and furnished and locked myself inside of. That evening, Leo came to the kitchen while I was at the stove and asked, in the direct way that 8-year-olds ask things that adults have spent weeks avoiding, whether Daddy was sad because of me. He said he had heard Daddy on the phone in the hallway the night before, and Daddy's voice had sounded the way it sounds when something is broken. He asked if she had broken something. I said no and everything was fine, and turned back to the pot. Through the window above the sink, the community park was visible in the fading light, and Jonas was on the bench near the fountain with his phone, and the deliberateness of his stillness read, even from that distance, as a decision he had already arrived at on his own. Thursday morning, Jonas was at the kitchen table with his legal pad when I came out after Leo left for school. The blue binder sat on the kitchen shelf, thin cover, noticeably thicker than utility bills ever required, and beside it a sticky note in his handwriting, reading bring forms. I had seen it 3 days ago and said nothing about it and said nothing now. He looked up when I came in and asked if I had a few minutes. He said he had one request. He wanted a single honest conversation about whether I wanted to continue the marriage. Not a negotiation, not a performance, just a conversation. He said he had been watching the pattern between them for 4 months, and he did not believe he had been imagining it, and he said he would rather know the truth plainly than keep reconstructing it from what he observed around him. He named the birthday dance specifically: the sash, the lean, the direct look across the room, and the parking stairwell that Priya had mentioned to him quietly on the Monday after the party. Then he asked what I expected the marriage to look like in 6 months, given everything since the Tuesday at the perch. Not a general question, a timeline question, a facts question, the kind that can only be answered by someone who has actually thought carefully about it. His voice was even, the way it always is. But the question required something honest, and I had nothing honest prepared, and the gap between having an answer and not having one is visible to a man who measures structural load for a living. I told him he was asking this as a technique and not as a husband. I said the fact that he had been gathering observations and triangulating timelines and speaking to Priya about my behaviour without telling me was the controlling pattern I had been experiencing for months, not a legitimate invitation to dialogue. I said I was not going to answer a test question framed as a conversation. I said I was late for work and picked up my bag. He said one more thing before I reached the door. He said if I would not have this conversation by Friday, he would make the decisions that needed to be made on his own terms. He said it the way he states a project constraint: factual, complete, and free of any feeling that would give me something to push back against. I left without responding. That afternoon I passed his office building on an errand and looked through the ground floor conference room glass as I went by. Jonas was at the table with someone I did not recognize from our social circle or from his firm, and he had a folder open and was pointing at something on the page, while the other person wrote steadily, line by line, the kind of notes that come from dictation rather than from discussion. I kept walking and told myself it was a project consultation. Saturday morning, Jonas took Leo to the park without asking whether I wanted to join. I watched them leave from the hallway, Leo in his yellow rain jacket because he had chosen it himself, and Jonas had not argued about it. I gave them 10 minutes and then went to the park and sat on the bench near the fountain entrance. Jonas was crouched at Leo's height across the water, pointing at the ducks. Leo was laughing. Jonas was not looking at his phone. He was entirely present, and the presence was directed away from me, and there was nothing I could say about it from 20 meters away on a bench I had walked to without being invited. Monday morning, Simone moved through the office corridor without stopping at the coffee station. Kwame nodded at a distance and kept moving. I decided people were already receiving Jonas's account of the birthday party, because that is how I operate, and I assumed everyone operated the same way. I opened my phone and went to the mutual friends group chat. 8 people, including Priya, Bex, 2 work-adjacent friends of Jonas's, and 3 others from our shared circle. And I wrote a message. I sent it before I finished editing, which I never do. The message said Jonas had become controlling and emotionally cold, that he monitored her friendships and timed her movements, that she felt like a suspect in her own home, and that she was evaluating whether the relationship was healthy for her well-being. I said I did not want to air private matters but needed my friends to hear something honest before a distorted version reached them first. I sent this to 8 people. One of them was Priya. Priya read the message. She opened her camera roll and looked at the 94-second video. The yellow sash, the lean, the cracked pink phone case on the DJ booth, the direct look I had given Jonas from the dance floor. She read the group message again. She screenshotted it. She saved both files. She did not reply to the group. She sent both pieces to Jonas that afternoon. By Friday, Jonas was polite and logistical, and somewhere completely unreachable. He asked about Leo's dental appointment, about which account the school book fare payment had come from, about the pickup time the Tuesday after next. He had moved his framed photograph from his side of the dresser to the top of the wardrobe. A small change, the kind I would not have noticed if I had not been watching for exactly this kind of change. I tried once more in the kitchen doorway while he was working at the hallway desk. I said I wanted to fix things. He turned and gave me his full attention and said he believed me and hoped I would have the honest conversation he had asked for on Thursday. I said I needed a few more days. He nodded and returned to the legal pad, writing something in careful columns. In the morning, the legal pad was in his bag and the desk surface was clear. Sunday evening, without preamble, Jonas said he would be handling what needed to be handled properly and formally starting that week. Clean and factual, the way he schedules a delivery or a site inspection. I asked what he meant by formally. He said I would know when the time came, poured himself a glass of water, and went to read. I stood at the kitchen counter and understood, for the first time with real clarity, that the binder and the sticky note and the conference room glass and the streaming account change and the legal pad full of columns were not separate behaviours. They were one structure, and it was already standing and had been for some time. I went to Jonas's office building on a Tuesday morning because he had not responded to anything except Leo's logistics for 4 days, and I decided that arriving at his workplace would force the conversation I had been avoiding. I dressed the way I dress for client meetings and crossed the marble lobby of the Devane and Associates building at 10:20. A man in a plain dark jacket was already standing near the frosted glass reception desk. He asked for me by my full name. I confirmed it, quickly, with confidence, without thinking, and he stated his role and placed the filing on the counter. The documents included a motion to freeze the joint accounts and halt new joint debt, already filed with a 14-day response window, and a preliminary custody plan for Leo. A civil cease and desist attached Exhibit B, the exact group message I had sent to 8 people, time-stamped, all recipients listed, giving me 7 days to correct the record or face formal complaint. The index also named Priya's 94-second birthday video, her written stairwell statement, and a calendar log of 14 occasions on which my stated location had not matched the geolocated record. He had started that log the night I came home from the perch. Jonas stepped from the elevator at 10:38. He saw me. He looked at me for 4 seconds, Not with satisfaction, not with cruelty, but with the face of someone who has finished a necessary thing, nodded once, and stepped back in. The doors closed. She had believed the dance was power. What the filing showed was a different kind of watching. 14 dates, a 94-second video, and a screenshot sent with more confidence than anything else she had done in weeks. Assembled by a man who wrote things down while she built an audience. What dismantled her was the timestamp. Leo's school bag comes home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The blue binder is gone from the kitchen shelf. Jonas collected his documents on the second Saturday, without drama. The joint account remains frozen. Priya has not replied in 11 days. The group chat has 5 members remaining, and none of them have spoken to her this week. Colt's last message is the unanswered one at the bottom of the thread. The cafe across from the office tower has a window table she has started to think of as hers. The first formal response hearing is in 19 days. The yellow birthday sash is still in the guest room closet, folded over a wire hanger with the silver letters facing the wall.